Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Peace United Church of Christ. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. This morning, we're going to be celebrating Pentecost, and we have three special people that will be speaking during our sermon time, and each of them will introduce themselves. Pastor Wendy is on vacation. She will be back on Friday. If you would, open your hearts and minds to take in these opening words. When the day of Pentecost had come, the disciples were all together in one place. Today, followers of the way gather in many places, from Jerusalem to Galilee, from Pago Pago to Appia, from Rome to Arabia, from Las Vegas to Cleveland. God's Spirit still blows like a mighty wind, breathing new life into our sails. God's Spirit still burns like tongues of flame, dancing over our heads. God's Spirit still flows like currents of living water, connecting hearts of all believers. Praise God. Let us worship God, from whom all life's blessings flow.
And today's readings come from Acts 2, 1 through 21. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place, and suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages as the Spirit gave them ability. Now, there were devout Jews from every people under heaven living in Jerusalem, and at this sound the crowd gathered and was bewildered because each one heard them speaking in the native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, "Are not all these who are speaking Galileans? How is it that we hear each of us in our own native language? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asia, Phrygia, and Pamphylia, Egypt, and parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabs. In our own languages, we hear them speaking about God's deeds of power. All were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, 'What does this mean?' But others sneered and said, 'They're filled with new wine.' But Peter, standing with the 11, raised his voice and addressed them, 'Fellow Jews and all who live in Jerusalem, let this be known to you and listen to what I say. Indeed, these are not drunk as you suppose, for it is only 9 o'clock in the morning. No, this is what was spoken through the prophet Joel. In the last days it will be, God declares, that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even upon my slaves, both men and women, in those days I will pour out my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show portents in the heaven above, and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and smoky mist. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the Lord's great and glorious day. And then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. For the wisdom contained in these holy words, we give thanks. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Summer. I started my journey at Peace at the beginning of the pandemic. I began by attending the Black Lives Matter vigils and watching worship at home. And I would have never expected to be as involved as I am now. I've been running our Instagram page for a few months now, It has been a true labor of love. I'm honored to be able to connect with Peace to a demographic we might not have otherwise been able to reach. I thought about ways to talk about my experiences and what led me here, and landed on writing a poem called Journey to Peace. I was never asked to speak in church. I grew up Roman Catholic. I'm sure you get the picture, but strict mass, priests, and nuns who wore habits. No room for questioning God, just nod and say yes. And don't forget you're doomed for hell if you don't pass all of his tests. No amount of confession could make me feel clean, but all I wanted was just to be seen. Love the sinner, hate the sin, but if I looked inward, I was riddled with them. I was never asked to speak in church. I stepped away from the church, prayed quietly alone, though I knew deep down I longed for a place to call home. During our days of isolation, I started researching, looking for those things in which my heart had been yearning. I messaged the pastor, I'm queer, have blue hair and tattoos, am I safe in your space? And the pastor replied, we serve a God of true grace. I was never asked to speak in church. I began rehearsing it in my mind. Quietly sneak in, no eye contact, you'll be fine. I did not get that option. I was greeted with care by a community I felt truly wanted me there. My journey to peace felt long and heavy, and for the first time in my life, my balance finally feels steady. Now I'm speaking in church, get asked to help with communion, run an Instagram page, and know what my truth is. For my God is bold, and says, beloved, precious child of God, you are beautiful to behold. Thank you.
Try this again here, see if it works. Good morning, everyone. I'm Clarence Myers, and myself and my wife Cindy, who's in the back, have been members for about 8 years. She promised not to throw me any signals in case I get wander too much. But, I guess really to talk about, why we're here and continuing with the church. I guess just a quick background in that years ago we did go to another denomination church, fairly liberal, and when the kids were small, we ended up moving and to a new location, and we tried a couple of churches in that location and just really didn't feel that comfortable there. About 10 years ago, I started looking for another church, and we tried a couple other churches, and frankly, we tried a couple other UCC churches. And even though many churches say they're open and all are welcome, when you actually go there and listen to the messages, talk to some of the people, that's not really always the case. And when we came to Peace, we immediately felt like it was a true open church, that everyone was welcome. It was a very warm, engaging congregation, and it felt right. And so we stayed. Over time, as members, there was more of a focus on social justice and inclusion programs. I'll just mention a couple that really stood out to us. Freedom School. When Freedom School first came up, I was a little apprehensive. I was kind of like, why do we need to get involved in this? But without understanding the whole program and the benefits of it. And since then, over the past several years, hundreds of young people throughout the community have really had an enrichment in their summer lives by attending Freedom School. I think it's really a cornerstone of the church today. Another thing I just mentioned is the work the church does with Metropolitan Congregations United on many social justice issues. One that really stands out in my mind is the Medicaid expansion in Missouri. That was a couple-year process of collecting signatures throughout the state, and Peace played a part in that with MCU, and eventually that went to the voters and was passed. And now today, 300,000 low-income Missourians have access to medical care through expansion. So that turned out to be really a great program. I mean, there's many social programs that the church participates in, support for immigrant families, food pantry, Sprouts of Peace. I'll mention Habitat since I'm involved in that. But it's really, the message of moving the church forward, and the mission of the church. Now, regarding, the relocation of the church in 204, I know that was a very, very complicated process, and it was a very difficult process for many people in the church, especially those that have been members for, in some cases, many decades. But I think the vision of what's at the end of the process really is important here. That change is very difficult. It's a new location, new chapel, new facilities, and even the small changes. For example, first couple times when we were driving here from home, we actually went a different route to get here. And it's only a few blocks away, but again, that's just a subtle change that it's a change in your kind of the daily process. But I do think that, the proposal for the potential senior housing at 204 is an exciting opportunity for the entire church. It will be a complicated and sometimes probably difficult process, but the rewards at the end really could be enormous for the community. So when, the question was, why are we staying at peace? Why are we at peace? I mean, really, mission kind of stands out in my mind. The mission of supporting all people in communities in which we live, trying to make life better and just for everyone. And probably a good reminder to look at the mission statement of the church: peace, united church of Christ, an open and affirming congregation, lives out the radical teachings of Jesus, and works in solidarity with all to achieve well-being, justice, and equity for God's creation. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Karen Schmiel, and I was asked to talk about why we have come back to peace. But first, I have a note for Paul Dietrich, so don't listen to this. This is just for Paul. Paul, you'll know the real reason we came back is that we haven't gotten enough of you yet. He made me say that. But for the rest of you, we returned to St. Louis 10 months ago yesterday. From the Chicago area. It was our intention to spend about a year visiting various churches around and about because we had never done that. First Sunday we came that many years ago, we went to Evangelical and never went anywhere else, never looked back. So it was our intention to do a lot of visiting. Truth be known, some of those Sunday morning churches that I intended to visit had names like the Missouri Botanical Garden, Laumeier Sculpture Park, Urban Bagels. But then we came here, our first Sunday, we said, well, let's go back to Evangelical, just to Evangelical. Old habits die hard. Just to see if there's anybody we knew. Well, there were lots of people we still knew, and it was wonderful. It was so fun. All those conversations started with, "Oh my gosh," and ended with a hug. But on that first Sunday, when we walked in, there were dozens, 50 maybe, children who were loud and excited and energetic and laughing and bouncing and running all over, and they brought parents with them who were only slightly less enthusiastic about the Sunday. Scholars, we learned as the day went on. It was the final event for Freedom School. And there was Wendy, who came across the narthex to welcome us and quickly assure us that not every Sunday was like this, which I thought was really quite a pity. It was pretty darn clear that something extraordinary was happening in this place. The congregation itself, besides the children and the parents, was all caught up and seemed to be involved. Who would not want to be in a place like this? At the end of their service, there were more "oh my goshes" and hugs all the way out to our cars in the parking lot. And that was day one at Peace. Day two at Peace, the next Sunday, was pretty tame by comparison, but it was still thoughtful and reflective and very much resourceful. Binders instead of bulletins, that's cool. How do we join God's work in the world is a part of the everyday liturgy. And invitations to Black Lives Matters rallies every single week, not just one special occasion, but every week. OMG. And then Wendy left for 3 months. But it looked to us like there wasn't one beat missed. Worship was still thoughtful and reflective. The work of the church continued. Black Lives Matter rallies happened right on schedule. But the most impressive part of that to me at that time was the remarkable lineup of people who spoke in the sermon time during those 3 months. They were all wonderful. Not a stinker in the group, as my mother would have said. It was a thoughtful and reflective and very well-organized congregation for sure. So we haven't visited one other church. We haven't even gone to the Botanical Garden or Laumeier Sculpture Park. Though truth be known, we have a number of visits to Urban Bagel. It's nice to be home. It's nice to be at peace.